Terra's Story, Chapter 36. The Beaumont Arms was nearly as old as the White House and nearly as grand. Originally a country resort for the rich and powerful, the city had long ago swallowed it, and all but a fringe of forest around the gardens that still buffered it somewhat from city noise and bustle. That little bit of protection from the outside world made it feel like a sanctuary. By mid-afternoon, the salon of the penthouse was occupied with a half-hearted poker game at one end and a soccer game broadcast from Australia on a big-screen TV, which viewers watched listlessly at the other. The giant dining table held a variety of food and drink. The remote viewing team had commandeered one of the farthest, quietest bedrooms. Jameson and Matthews sat with Cap, Christine, and the mayor in a conversation group around a marble fireplace that was filled with a giant flower arrangement. Outside on the terrace, Terra paced while Brian and Joni huddled, watching the darkening sky as they talked. They heard squeaks and caught flashes of movement as bats flitted through the twilight catching dinner. "They feel like family now, don't they?" Brian quipped. Terra chuckled, thinking about it. "Yeah, they do, actually. I feel a sort of kinship. Since I've been one now." Then she sobered, remembering what she still thought of as her failure. This is hard, trying to figure out what Marius will do next. Terra looked over at Joni, whose friendship had kept her strong over the years they'd worked together, while her skill at her job made them a powerful team. Joni was leaning back against the arm Brian had braced around her, frowning in concentration. As she watched, Brian reached over with his free hand to tuck some strands of hair behind Joni's ear. Terra saw Joni smile at his touch and felt a small twinge, a hint of longing that quickly morphed into gladness for her friend. Yes, she was glad for them, especially at such a scary time. Terra walked over to sit on the lounge chair opposite them and waited while they sat up and leaned forward to converse better. "Let's look at what we know," she began. "We have an incarcerated psychopath who is able to somehow commit atrocious murders, apparently in retribution for having the ransom money snatched out of his hands. We know he wants the money. It's a pretty safe bet he wants vengeance. Has his attention been diverted from the original hostage, the city, the public, the systems, to these hostages? Now that the original gang seems to have been decimated, does he have the resources to repeat the disruption of services? Will he have lost interest in that to focus on regaining the ransom and exacting revenge? What kind of revenge? I mean, can we guess how he controlled these people? Could he control them again, make them do something awful to each other or themselves?" She paused and waited for a response. Or, wondered Brian, will he send in a swarm of demons, and what would that look like? Would they be physical beings? Could they get past the sentries we have patrolling the halls and the grounds? "I wonder that, too, Brian," Joni joined in. "But the special ops are patrolling the grounds with dogs, and I'm pretty sure the dogs would sense something even before the soldiers did." "Do we have anything from the remote viewers yet?" Terra wondered. "They've been at it for over 3 hours now. Are they going to report, or do we need to—" Her question was silenced by the sound of the French doors opening behind them. "Ma'am?" "Yes?" Terra's breath had caught in her throat. "What is it, soldier?" "The Latauder Call would like to confer with you all. Will you please come with me?" He turned, and as soon as he saw them rise to follow, strode toward the suite where they knew the remote viewers had been working. He knocked twice on the door, opened it, and stood aside to let them pass before quietly closing the door after them. Jameson, Matthews, Christine, and Cap were listening intensely to a young major whose eyes looked a little wild, although her voice and bearing remained calm. The officers on either side of her looked both supportive and defensive. The conversation stopped as they approached. "What's up, Cap?" Terra inquired, uneasy at the tension in the room. "Terra, Brian, Joni, this is Major Suarez, Lieutenant Jordan, and Corporal Harris." Cap made the rounds of introductions. "Anita's fine, sir," the young woman with the major's bars responded. "Jeff, sir," added the man with the lieutenant's bars. "And I'm just plain old Joe," said the corporal with a southwestern drawl. The lieutenant took the lead in the conversation. "We've just been giving our report. Anita viewed first, and Joe viewed as soon as we finished her debrief. He got, confirmation, but also additional intel." Terra's body had tightened and her patience was strained. Well, what? Ma'am, if I may, I've been viewing for the military for 5 years now, using military protocol, but I've been viewing most of my life the way my family, we're what used to be called seers, has been doing it for generations. I've never seen anything like what I saw today. Wait. She held up a hand to forestall Terra's impatience. I need you to know my credentials so that you'll have an easier time receiving this report. Okay, thanks, Anita. Terra relented. So, as usual, I was given coordinates and not told what the target was or what to expect, though of course I knew it had something to do with the city power hostage situation or we wouldn't be here. Nothing more specific. The location turned out to be a cell in some kind of prison. The man inside looked like he could be cast as a character in some Harry Potter or Tolkien flick. Anita, don't interpret. Just describe what you saw, chided the captain. Right. Sorry, sir. The occupant had thin white hair and beard and wore a prison regulation orange jumpsuit. When I arrived, he was walking rapidly in a circle. He was making signs in the air as he walked, and a fog started building on the floor, everywhere in the cell except the circle in the middle. When it got to slightly above his knees, lightning bolts started flashing in it, and it went from a thick gray mist to roiling black clouds with streaks of red and orange that kept growing bigger. By the time it reached the target's shoulders, it was exploding like a string of firecrackers. And he wasn't alone anymore. I could see several shapes moving inside that storm, but I couldn't tell you what they were. I can tell you they stunk like a rotting corpse. I got nauseous. I wanted to see more. It was like I was being reeled in on a fishing line. Never had that before, and it was terrifying. And I wanted to get the hell out of there as fast as I could. I can tell you that the wave of energy that hit me just then felt like an artillery barrage, or a sock to the jaw. It punched me right out of there and back here, and boy, was I glad to get back. Anita reached for her glass of water and drank the whole thing down. She looked up at Corporal Joe, who reached over and patted her shoulder. Then he took over. My coordinates took me to a prison cell, too. But when I got there, the cell looked pretty normal. A man was there in an orange jumpsuit, tall and skinny, scraggly white hair and beard. But he wasn't alone. There were 4 creatures, I would call them. Grotesque. One was short and squat and had legs like an insect and a giant forehead where its head would be, and a big mouth filled with pointed teeth in the middle of its belly. The eyes... Joe, we don't need the details, interrupted Jeff. Thank you, whispered several others, shuddering and trying to contain the rise of bile. Okay, Jeff. Joe shifted his mind back and flinched. There was a pull and a push, something strong attracting, and something just as strong repelling. They sure stunk, for sure. I could hardly breathe. Well, you know what I mean. I'm not sure, responded Brian. When you're remote viewing, aren't you astral traveling? Yet you talk like you have all your senses active. How can that be? You're right. Most remote viewers still actively use all their bodily senses as well as their spiritual ones. I'm not really sure how it works, except that it's got something to do with consciousness. Another difference for me is that I can see energy when I'm remote viewing better than I normally can. That's the other thing I want to tell you. And this is my opinion, off the record. Joe and Jeff locked gazes, and a message passed between them. Jeff's head ducked slightly. Joe turned his gaze back to Cap. Let me describe it first. The man lays down on the bunk and pulls the blanket up over him, including his face, all but the top of his head. Then he gets up from his body, or some part of him does, because the body is still lying with eyes closed on the bunk. But the double looks as solid as anything else in the cell, including those nasty creatures. So they're standing in the middle of the cell and they begin to dissolve into black smoke. The smoke oozes around the cell, which doesn't have a window, and begins to surge through the grill into the ventilation shaft. As they leave the cell, this wave of energy rolls over me that is suffocating and hopeless. Etherically, it looks and feels like a mix of puke and mud. I watch it spread out everywhere I can see, like the fog behind what we used to call the mosquito trucks that sprayed clouds of DDT at twilight several times a week in the summer. We were so naive then. We lost the firefly population and who knows how many other beautiful insect species. We even used to run behind the trucks and play in that fog, oblivious to its poison or the damage it did to us as well as the environment. Well, I'm not oblivious anymore, and I was sure not inclined to play in the fog those demons left behind. Joe popped his right fist into his left palm, his jaw tight. They all looked around, checking each face for reaction. You said demons, Anita stated. Yes, that's what I could call them too. And I'm going to give you my unasked for opinions as a civilian because I can't stay silent knowing what I now know. When she glanced at Jeff, she saw understanding in his eyes and approval in the set of his mouth. She let go the muscles holding her stiff and straight and reached for her empty glass. More, please? She asked, holding the glass up high. Remember, I'm from generations of seers. Well, like most, we were also healers. We could see into other dimensions. We could read energy, and we could read intention. My people know that intention is what creates a thought form, which is the series of words that trigger a story. Every intention has a vibration, a frequency that gives it an energetic stamp. That's what you feel when you read energy. And the energetic stamp of this man and his demons is death and destruction. They are out to kill. And while everybody associated with this situation is a target, they don't really give a rat's ass whose blood is sacrificed. That statement elicited several gasps and an electric silence. So, what do we do? Demanded Christine. There is evil in the world. There are demons and devils and other hideous things. This is not new news, folks, and we are not newbies at this either. We have a wealth of wisdom and knowledge right here. We're not bowing to this sorcerer just because he can do intimidating black magic. She leaned against Cap and hiccuped, and when he reached an arm around her, she hid her face against him and sniffled, but only for a half-minute. Then she stood up straight and looked pointedly at Terra, Joni, and Brian. Well, you're absolutely right, Christine. Joni and Terra jumped up at the same time, spoke at almost the same time, and laughed. Wow, it feels good to laugh. Brian tucked his long legs beneath him and lumbered up too. You're all right. It's time to call in every ally and pool all our knowledge. Light is stronger than darkness, so let's come up with a plan, or several plans. They stood for a moment, looking around at the others. You are all part of this. Terra included the remote viewing team, Jameson and Matthews in a sweeping motion of her arm, and you understand better than most the multidimensional reality we're facing. Plus, you're trained in how to create strategies. Come on, let's take a quick break and meet back here in 20 minutes. The atmosphere in the room became electric with energy as everybody jumped up and headed toward the salon, food, and fresh air. The paralysis of fear was dissipated by focus on their strengths, which included every one of their supernatural abilities.